Hello, bonjour. My name is Megan, and on behalf of the Ottawa Art Gallery, I would like to welcome you to our virtual program, Une parcelle de moi, a glimpse of me, a screening and in conversation. Before we begin, I would like to acknowledge that the land on which the Ottawa Art Gallery operates is the traditional and unceded territory of the Algonquin Nation. In this video, we invite you to discover Une parcelle de moi, a multimedia theater performance and documentary installation by Tiphaine Girault and Paula, currently on view in our exhibition RhythmScape at the OAG until January 3rd, 2021. This virtual program will consist of a 20-minute screening of Une parcelle de moi, followed by an in-conversation about the work. This conversation will take place between Catherine Sinclair, OAG's Deputy Director Chief Curator, and Tiphaine Girault and Paula, artists and co-founders of Spill Propagation, who commissioned the work in 2014. They will also be joined by Andrea Donaldson, the work's co-director and co-concept creator, as well as writers and performers of the piece, Peter Owusu-Ansah and Ali Saeedi. Thank you for joining us, and without further ado, here is Une parcelle de moi.
I remember I was a little boy sitting on the front steps of my house. Where did my friends go? I remember my brother's tire. I took it. I ran with it. The wind blew. My foot stomping whilst the air make it look like Willie car. Far away. I thought I need good washing with my tire. I ran. Houses were all over the place. House. I didn't want any trouble, so I remember garbage, mountain with my tire. I ran for. I arrived. I left my tire on the street. Grass. I went through. My car is still there. Heart went boom. Where's my tire? I felt scared. It's not my tire, it's my brother's. I look around. A strange old man with my tire. He walked with one lumpy leg. I called, "Hey, you have my tile! Hey, have my tile!" And he started walking fast. I chased him. He made a left turn. I arrived. It was in 3 directions. I look, and look, and look. The old man is gone. I was afraid to go back home. I knew I would be in trouble. My house is pink with blue window behind a yellow building. The yellow building has 2 coconut trees and 2 palm trees. We do everything with this house. We kick soccer ball against the house, make dirt. We climb the walls, walk on it. We climb the trees. We bend the coconut benches and swing. We do everything with the house. Food name fufu, sticky with soup and meat. Cut it with our finger and then take the soup and then sew school. Every time I'm late, I get punished with my knee on the ground, in the sand, rocks. I feel hurt, and with my hands in the air for a long time. So tired. In class, I tend to fall asleep. A stick hit my head and I woke up. And then the teacher sent me to go and run around, merry-go-round. Church, I hear that God is the sun. One day I went home and looked into the sun. It was pale yellow. It was shining. It was blinding my eyes. When the priest found that I was deaf, he tried to pray for me. He turned to other people fall down, put his hand on my forehead, and pray and pray and pray. Keep pushing me, but I wasn't falling. kept pushing me again and again. Keep pushing me. It was so annoying. But I gave up myself. I fall. And then I got up, but that's not helping. My family, I never met my mom. I thought my sister was my mom. I have 3 brothers and 3 sisters. One day, a young boy was agreeing with me. He said, my sister, not my mother. I said, my sister, yes, she's my mother. He said, no. And then one day, I found a picture. My sister told me, that's my mother. But I was almost 15 years old. I was happy mixed with sad feeling. At the airport, I was with my daddy, remembering now that saying goodbye, looking at his face, I saw he felt he lost a child. Thinking about this make me emotional. On the airplane, I hate the food. It was new food to me. It was so mashy. I think that's mashed potatoes. I think that was that. I hate it. So I drank Coke all the way. Soon the plane was landing. I took a block of sugar and put it in my pocket. But then I was afraid to cross the line because I remember a movie of a woman who was caught with cocaine inside her bag. I was scared. When I crossed the line, the police came to me and took me to the office. I sat there and wet and wet and wet, and then I fall asleep. And then my brother came. My brother came to tell me. I woke up, and then he took me home. Canada was a new place. Every time I try to learn where to go, I walk a short distance from my house, and then I come back home. And then I walk a short distance in the other area, and then I come back home. So I was learning new place. Each time I walk farther. The first food I learned to eat was Chinese food, rice. I remember snow. The first time I saw it, I thought it was same as ice from the freezer. I thought people put it there. I tasted it. And then for a while, I was cold. Now, I'm a father of 4 children.
Okay, so hello everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. I'm Catherine Sinclair, Deputy Director and Chief Curator at the Ottawa Art Gallery. And today I will be conversing with artists Tiphaine Girault and Paula, co-founders of Spill Propagation, who commissioned the work Une parcelle de moi, currently on view in RhythmScape at the OAG until January 3rd, 2021. We will also be hosting their guests, so I'm also pleased to say hello and welcome to Andrea Donaldson, co-stage director and concept creator, and writers and performers Peter, Owusu-Ansah, and Ali Saeed. Welcome everyone. So as with all our programs, virtual or not, I will begin by acknowledging that the Ottawa Art Gallery, the host institution of the talk today, is situated on the traditional and unceded territory of the Anishinaabe Algonquin people. Thank you also to Carmel and Catherine for interpreting for us today. This is the first time with the pleasure of including work by Tiphaine and Paula in an exhibition at the OAG. And so before beginning, I will just briefly introduce both of you. So Tiphaine Girault is a visual storyteller, director, and translator. Originating from France, Tiphaine has a BA in graphic novel and works in French, English, and 2 sign languages. For over 10 years, Tiphaine has worked as a professional artist in comic arts, printmaking, and sign language translation and performance. Her work has been featured in several exhibitions and documentaries. Tiphaine has hosted national arts leadership residencies, expanding art practices in sign language and with Spill Propagation, and in 2018 was honored for her leadership in the arts in LSQ in Quebec. Paula Bath, researcher, creator, and writer. After learning American Sign Language at the age of 16, Paula went on to study translation, communication, and cultural institutions to obtain a BA and an MA in communications. Paula's work is observational and conversational and brings images and texts together to explore moments where dominant social ideas, beliefs, and social structures are lived, felt, and discussed by people. Paula is thrilled to live and work in the spaces of sign and spoken languages, ASL, Langue des Signes Québécoise, English, and French. So I will now pass it over to Tiphaine to bring up the collaboration with Spill Propagation. Thanks, Tiphaine.
Well, Spill originally commissioned the work Une parcelle de moi in collaboration with all the artists here. We had Andrea, Pete, Ali, Paula, and myself in partnership with Picasso Pro, the Ontario Arts Council, the Canada Council for the Arts, as well as the City of Gatineau. And the project happened in 2014. Spill is an organization that's been established for quite a while. And we look at the deaf artist process, deaf-led artistic process, and working together and collaborating together. Spill is for deaf artists, and we work across Canada in ASL and LSQ. And we go to many different areas, and we work together to try to collaborate all the artists, and we are multidisciplinary. we look at, we want to grow that population with deaf artists. We don't want to have any limitations, and work together and research and create together and produce together as well as the deaf community and deaf artists. We work with many artistic centers and organizations and different artistic companies as well. We work nationally as well as internationally. And so there are other deaf artists around the world that we work together with. And so thank you. Back to you, Catherine.
Thanks, Tiphaine. It's very exciting to be working together with SPIL. So I'll just briefly continue to just introduce the context of what we're talking about today. So the work in Parcelle de Moi is part of the exhibition RhythmScape that's on view at the Ottawa Art Gallery right now. And RhythmScape was originally a group exhibition toured and circulated by the Gyeonggi Museum of Modern Art in South Korea in 2015. It toured to Tokyo, Japan, and this represents its North American debut. Of course, we had to shut it down about 3 days after the pandemic hit, after an exciting opening reception. So we were very, very happy to be able to reopen it July 8th so that we could have audiences come through. And the gallery is actually still open. So I do encourage you to go down and check it out and in the context of the exhibition itself. The exhibition brought together the work of 5 Korean artists, South Korean artists, 1 Japanese artist, and 1 Swedish artist. So definitely visit the OAG's website to find out more about it. But we were invited to include the work of 2 Canadian artists as well. And so along with the work of Brendan Fernandez, we brought the work of Tiphaine and Paula and this performance into the context of this exhibition. So essentially, actually, before I continue talking about everything, let's just go around the people on this Zoom chat and have you just maybe speak briefly to just introduce your name and your role in the piece in Parcelle de Moi, and then I'll speak a little bit more about the piece. So maybe we can start with Andrea.
Thanks, Catherine. So my name is Andrea Donaldson. I live in Toronto and I'm a professional theater director. And some of my, especially my early work was really focused on collective creation. And I think that was part of one of the selling features that connected me with SPIL, because Paula and Tiphaine at that time were really interested in creating a work for performance from scratch, which was one of my favorite things to do. So we were kind of set up like a blind date almost, and it just happened to really click. Thank you. Shall I pass it on to Pete, maybe?
Sure. Hi, I'm Peter. Owusu-Ansah. I'm a visual artist. I used to be a performer. I did a lot more stage performance, but I find visually, I'm more interested in visual arts. And I've been doing that, I would say, for the last 5 or 10 years. I decided to get involved with SPIL just for guidance, leadership, to get more involvement in the artist community. But I haven't been involved in a major extent, but maybe I'll turn it over to Ali.
Hi, everyone. I'm Ali. I live in Toronto. And I'm a filmmaker, an actor, an artist. I write, I create a number of different things. And I'm still doing that. So I was very appreciative of being invited to participate in this with SPIL. I'm originally from Iran, and I think that is all I need to say. So I'll stop right there.
And so I think if Tiphaine and Paula would like to say anything, you can go ahead, or we can come back to you with some other questions.
Thanks. Yeah, we were started to get involved in this project. The initial concept for A Glimpse of Me, we knew we didn't want it to be a scripted play. We wanted everything to be visual. And we didn't want to give a script to the other actors for them to rehearse from. We wanted, it was a completely new idea. And we wanted to see deaf storytelling involved. So like that idea of a blind date, right? Like what is that first emotional, visceral response? And how do we create something together without having that set story, without having a script? And that's how it evolved. But we did develop the story, but it was collaboratively.
So the idea of the glimpse of me, you know, we were discussing this and we wanted to work together with all the artists, with Ali and Pete, myself, and going through the process of unpacking and discovering and seeing how where that process led us in the creation, our deaf stories, our deaf experience. And they're so varied. We're all from different countries. We all have different experiences. Our our lives growing up are completely different. Some of them are way off the topic. Some of them overlap. We found through that process and that there was some intersection within our experiences. And it was really interesting to take a deeper look at that. And it was a glimpse of different pieces of our lives, looking at how our language was used, our communication styles, looking at language. I mean, I love language and communication, and having, for me, French and growing up in France and coming here, learning LSQ, a different sign language. And so for me, you know, from 0 to 5, I had no way of communicating, no language to communicate with. And my exposure to language was quite limited. I was only limited to the written word and to comic books, to different illustrations. So for me, that was my way of communicating. And I would read that and I would read them over and over again. And just, you know, like the Tintin, I don't know if you guys are familiar with that comic strip. And I was a huge fan. I love Tintin. I would read those comics over and over. I would never get bored. And so eventually that was just something that was ingrained in me. And Andrea and Paula and I were discussing how we could take those pieces and work with it, and as an artist, and how to communicate. And that's something that's very strong with me, you know, trying to express those glimpses of me through communication of art and language and my drawings, for example. So that's where that concept of glimpse came from.
Okay, thank you very much. That's great to have that insight into the development.
And Nellie, did you want to add something about the idea of the glimpse of me? I'm just wondering what your perspective is on this process. And Ali is saying, you know, it was a great experience for me, bringing my culture from Iran. And a lot of people just don't know about the history and don't know what the experiences are like. So I felt that I was able to bring that to a greater audience and speak to my experience of also the sign language and how I communicated and how I had to learn ASL. And ASL is completely different than the sign language that I grew up with in Iran. And so I had to learn that coming here, and as well being customized to Canadian culture, and, you know, having that respect for both cultures and languages. And I just wanted to have that little bit of my history, and showing the history of my family and how much I value family and how that impacted us coming here to Canada. But it was just overall a wonderful experience.
And if I may, my role within A Glimpse of Me, I'm from Ghana originally. Life in Ghana was different. It's a hearing world, and I was placed within that. I could hear a little and was able to express myself in spoken word a little bit. You know, I learned a few words here and there. So when I think of that, a glimpse of me, and the way we use the sign is in taking things in through the eye. When I'm looking at Africa, it's through the eye. So yeah, it was wonderful to share that part, my experience here in Canada compared to growing up. And it was almost like a mirror image, or to be able to show those two facets. It was really interesting.
I thank you so much for sharing. I really love hearing all this because it really speaks to the reasons why I wanted to include this performance in the exhibition, in Rhythmscape, because the original premise of this exhibition was about looking at a theory by French theorist Henri Lefebvre, who wrote a book all about how artists are essentially rhythm analysts, that there's rhythms to society, that there's ways of understanding what he called the noises and the silences, which would have an entirely different meaning when you're coming from your context, of course, but that artists, contemporary artists can read these rhythms and be de facto rhythm analysts about understanding how these societies work. And the original show has, like I said, 5 artists from South Korea, and you get this real pantheon of different things that they are illustrating or aspects of society that they are picking up on. And when we were asked to look at Canadian artist content, this piece really struck me as containing sort of the Canadian perspective, because all 3 of you have come from different contexts. All 3 of you are experiencing being from the deaf community, which is an entirely different experience than had been shown in the show to date. And so just adding this extra layer to me was so important and interesting to bring into the conversation about how artists like yourselves read society or comment. So maybe some of you can comment on that. I know that's kind of a lot, but do you agree that there's kind of a rhythm maybe to not only Canada or your experience here, but your home countries as well, and how you navigated that? And is there a rhythm that you would agree that you're trying to understand or put forward with this performance? So maybe Tiphaine?
Sure. Well, from my perspective, when we think of Rhythmscape, we work through a process. And with Andrea and Paula and myself, it felt like when we were going through the process that there was many different topics that we could have covered, but we wanted to focus on the experience of education, experience of religion, family traditions, how we take meals together, for example, and these aspects that are common across different groups. And it's funny, sometimes you think, sometimes a certain noise or something will be funny, and everyone, something that occurs over and over again, and you express and share that story and that experience, but it doesn't matter where you're from. So there could be common aspects. And there could be some kind of conflict or culture conflict that could be similar in another country. When we think of the OAG, the part 1 with the show looking at religion, was that Paula? Do you want to explain that, why religion ties into this so well with Glimpse of Me?
Sure. So again, because we've set up the show to be very visual, and what we wanted to do was within a person's life or experience is just take a glimpse, a snapshot, a part of what it is that they're experiencing. And so we thought, if we look at religion as that snapshot, that glimpse, so what we wanted to do was, to have people immersed in that experience. To give you an example, each of the artists, the deaf performers, weren't doing the same, they weren't in the same rhythm as each other. So, but what we wanted to do is have them involved in the story. For example, Pete would have his character, his dialogue that he expressed and explain, and he would have his rhythm during his component, during his scene. And Tiphaine would have her rhythm during her scene, talking about her family and relationships. And Ali was the same. So again, he would have his own unique rhythm, and the three of them would impose their own rhythms. And then when we thought about religion being a key aspect of this, but how could we make it the same within the three? So again, we wanted to adjust that for each of the performers. And we wanted to say how, like, we wanted to get rid of, deafness, but we wanted that to be part of what their experience was, to create an overall rhythm, to get an overall feel for the piece. Because each religious community has its own context. And then if deaf people want to, so within the religious community, so each of the performers, if the religious community is saying, oh, we want to heal them, but what they need to do is love them as they are. So that's what you see with the internal rhythm. Within the actual performance, you'll see the three and how they interweave. Andrea, did you want to add a comment about the rhythm of your piece?
Yeah, I felt it was really important in coming into this project that it was really absolutely sourced from the three performers, and especially in terms of offering something for an audience, that we prioritized these voices that are very seldom seen on stage. And so even in that, there's a glimpse there, and also a recognition that just because you're seeing this on stage with me for 20 minutes does not give you a full picture. I'm more full than that. So when we spent time creating together, we were doing all sorts of different prompts to bring out stories from each person's personal experience, and finding those connectivity moments, finding those moments that kept surfacing. For example, belonging or lack of belonging kept coming to the surface, as you see in the piece. And I think what became really interesting is that because we held the desire to have an integrated audience of deaf and hearing folks, that we were not prioritizing one language over another either. So that the experience of it as a hearing person in the audience, I was only getting a glimpse of something because, for example, Ali would be signing. I don't know ASL. And Tiphaine was drawing. Well, that's more of a universal language for me. And for Pete, he really wanted to sign and speak, and that was his own choice. So each person was really making their own decision in that way. And, I think ultimately the decision around creating all of those layers where, all of them were communicating with each other and with us simultaneously, sometimes on their own. It meant that there's always something we're getting and there's always something that we're missing. And that somehow felt really central to capturing the rhythms of the three performers.
And if I can add too, about language, that the rhythm has to do with language and communication. That was a big integral element of this piece. The presentation aspect of it and the visual installation. During the creative process for both of them, even in the beginning when we were looking at, I remember Andrea, you and I would talk often about what language are we going to pick to show it. It was almost as if the rhythm and a harmonious experience was important. And so we were thinking about the accessibility of it, or how we're going to harmonize rhythms from the spectators to the presenters to the artists before we created it. And we spent lots of conversations around that and realized that we weren't going to do that for this piece. We were going to just, everyone, like Andrea said, could choose their communication, their tone, their rhythm, their frequency, and they could share that frequency outwards, and it will be what it will be, and it'll be beautiful. Then comparing that though to the visual installation, we chose to make sure that the languages were in English and French. So that's different because we wanted people to take a rhythm of pause, take a moment to stop, to read, to project themselves, each and every artist's story. And then the relationship and the communication between those two people, the spectator who's pausing and the actor who divulged and who shared their story, there's that moment of connection and rhythmic connection in that piece too. So it was just a different presentation, but nonetheless, those rhythms of language and communication were always present throughout.
Yeah.
If I can just add too that as a theater creator, the way that we would create was not a hearing centered process at all, which has its own rhythm as well. For me as really an outsider, for me in a hearing process, it's fast, we interrupt each other, there's more hierarchy. And in this situation, we were really conscious of, and I was really conscious, especially as the outsider, as the hearing person, to not assert my own rhythm onto that process, but to respond to the rhythms that were before me. And I feel like that's evident in the actual piece. I think the process affects the outcome.
Yeah, I think that's really important, and it's so important to learn from working in experiences like this. And yeah, I mean, just even bringing it into the art gallery itself has been wonderful experience in working with Paula and Tiphaine so directly, and just understanding and trying to learn these stories. And it's often right about that. Perhaps if I may, I'll just sort of ask another question. I mean, particularly Ali and Peter and Tiphaine, you're all from such intersecting communities and with intersecting identities, with not only being from deaf communities, but also from French Canadian, African diaspora, as well as Iranian diaspora. And so in that experience, is this for each of you the first, like, have you, as artists and performers, have you always brought your experience with deafness directly into your commentary as artists, or is this a first opportunity for some of you to directly address deafness in your work?
Ali here, or Pete, do you want to go first? No.
Go ahead.
Thank you for all your comments. Those are great. You know, I like the idea of not having to follow a script, and that being able to express ourselves and use our imagination to do that. You know, it helped guide us through the process and our storytelling, and taking those little pieces. And so with your guidance, Tiphaine and Paula and Andrea, like, we all worked together, and it was such a great process. For me, it wasn't just my show, it was all three of us. And, you know, we basically played off of each other and working together and collaborating together. And I thought that was such a great experience. In terms of my language, in Iran, we had different pieces of that. I was able to express myself in the family, look at what we did for meals, you know, and, you know, my mom makes wonderful food. And so, and kebabs, making kebabs, the meat on a stick. And so, you know, I will never forget that experience growing up. Those are such a big part of our family get-togethers and gatherings, and being able to express that and share my stories. It was just great.
Oh, Ali, what about your experience about the rhythms that were intersect? I remember you were saying this installation at the OAG, there was the green cloth, and then you had the bit coming off of your cuff. Because from, you know, the lens of my culture watching your piece, and with your trying to explain that to me, and then finally I was able to, like, with that rhythm of communication, I wasn't able to get it. It just wasn't tangible. I was missing that cultural experience of his, and so it was almost like that culture clash, not a war, but it's just they weren't able to overlap. So I wasn't able to. They were diverging rather than converging. So it was interesting when you were speaking about your friend from Iran. And then once I was able to understand a little bit more of the cultural context, then suddenly I got the rhythm of what the piece was. And Pete saying, for me to be able to express myself, I was really able to share so much about my African experience, the impact that it had on me. It was great because I was able to, through movement, through dance, I could show you. It's not the first time I've been able to do that. But I felt like this performance was the first time I was able to truly show myself. It was a wonderful experience.
And for me, to fencing, when I arrived here, you know, I wasn't really into theater, and it was with Ali and Pete. They had basically already been there before. I worked with other deaf artists, and I just I came later on. So, you know, the process for this was very difficult to unpack my stories. You know, with Ali and Pete, and then Paula and myself, we were trying to figure out, like, I wasn't sure if I should be a part of this and should I be performing. And they had basically said, please, you know, participate in this with us. So then I ended up doing that, and it was a journey, and it took a while to get settled into it. But after a while, we got into our own rhythm with each other, and we felt safe. It felt like a safe place to express ourselves and to share that story. So it was the first time that I had experienced such a safe space to be able to express myself in that way.
That's right. And if I could add on, when I was watching the video, I got a chance to review it again. In fact, I hadn't seen it before. So the first time I watched it, I thought, wow, that's what we did. I really bared my soul there.
Exactly. Yeah.
And that, you know, I was a little shocked. But it's, you know, something that I've come to terms with.
Exactly. Yeah.
So wonderful to see, and it's so interesting to come back objectively at something that you were so in at a few years ago, right, in creating. And of course, the most powerful moment for me in the performance is when you're writing other, autre, and you're crossing it out and you're stamping it out on the floor, and it's the three of you close and together and doing.
Oh, yeah. Other, right.
It's so it's such a crescendo in the performance. I wondered if, of course, we're all in a pandemic situation here, so it's interesting to think about the context that we are all in now, and we're speaking to each other over Zoom interface, and that was a live performance, and then we put it in the gallery, and I'm thinking about all these different layers of how we're looking at all this now. And I wondered if, we never expected to be doing, we thought we'd do a live talk or, but maybe we wouldn't have been able to have everybody because we can bring different people from different regions together. So there's good things and bad things. And one of my questions I had for you was in terms of the experience of the live performance and how did you feed off the audience? I mean, Andrea, you spoke to that a little bit already. For the performers, seeing it as an art installation, experiencing it as a live performance, how did that all feel? Is there a difference there on how it felt and how it feels now?
I can address that. I'm not sure how I feel about that. To see the art, to see the visual installation at OAG, I haven't been yet. So I don't know how that's going to have an emotional impact on me, how it will affect me. But COVID has definitely had an impact on me. I've been working from home. I've been with my family a lot more than I have in the past. But in particular, this year I found has been such a disruption. But yeah.
And related to your question, comparing live performance and the installation, I was there for the live performance, and at the end, we sat together and we had a chat with the audience. We had a talk back with the patrons who came to watch, and they had questions for us. And so one thing that I noticed with that, it's just I felt like them as hearing folks that they started to get a better idea of what we experience day to day as deaf people, getting that information and sharing that information and what it's like and that visual aspect. So it seemed to have a great impact on the audience. Especially I seemed to get that sense that they just had a revelation. It was such a new experience having it, being a deaf person, but coming to a new country, experiencing new culture, learning a new sign language, different religions and different, whatever background you might be coming from. And, that you really have to put your mind to it and be resilient to get through all that. With the, for the opening at the Ottawa Art Gallery, for the installation there, there was one woman who approached us and asked, she had taken a look at what we had, took her time, read through all the text, and there were focused on the one piece with the religion and saw that, and basically just had an eye-opener, and this person's from Colombia, and she said, wow, just really to have that idea of being human, regardless of where you're from. And, religion is obviously it's so complicated, and there are politics and social norms and traditions all within that. But the point is that we're human and we do have that commonality. And this is something that she came to realize after seeing our installation, and that there was that common understanding. There are differences, of course. And, like when you go through life, you think it's all, different, but talking about language, like Paula had mentioned, and how people access information differently, and just having that there and that different impact. And Ali's following up with this. So Glimpse of Me, we performed back in 2014, and then it, quieted down. We were finished the performance, and seems that, now that it's brought back, it's quite exciting, and it's wonderful that this is happening. And just thinking back on when we performed it live and comparing the two, I think both approaches are wonderful. The live aspect, we have the audience, and there could be, when the piece with my religion and having the being tied to the gate, And there's something in Iran that they did that. It was cultural in Iran, and people who know what that looks like can envision it right away. You know, they know what the landscape looks like. And once we described it, they can put themselves in that situation right away. So I thought that was wonderful. And that's something that happened in the live show.
We didn't want to have interpretation during the live show. If you remember. So we didn't have the interpreter like we do today, who were speaking what the actors were signing. So that meant everyone was on par. Because Ali's sign is different, and that, you know, was using Iranian Sign Language during. And I don't know Iranian Sign Language, but I was still able to understand him. But again, like it's still like he would express his stories about being in the car, but because it was the experiences, I was able to do that. And I loved his comment just now when he was talking about you know, the real, like the tangible bits about being able, like we were able to see what it was you were talking about. And Pete, you were talking about coming out of the church and looking up, and you saw the sun shone in your face, and it was right away you get that visual part of it. And so it's bringing a little bit of that experience to the gallery, shining that light. And so we were able to reproduce that in the gallery. And the story about the priest and the holy water, doing the baptism, trying to put the water into the ears. And so again, it was like the tangible objects, the things that you could touch and interact with, is what made it really unique and interesting. I find the visual installation as well, having the connection, showing where the countries are, having just that visual representation as well, just very interesting. And Pete saying, you're right, with the visual installation now at the OAG, I think is a very positive experience, especially with COVID. It's very difficult for deaf people, you know, an opportunity to show, to have an exhibition, to have that space, because, you know, hearing people are able to book spaces with more ease. It's more difficult as a deaf artist, but I find with COVID, it's leveling the playing field. So in that respect, it's positive.
That's wonderful to hear. And just being, it really strikes me about, you know, what you've said about being vulnerable and sort of seeing the sharing of those stories objectively a few years later, and in this new format, it's sort of, oh, I shared so much, but it's, I think how much we all benefit from you going that step, and we get to learn and see in both formats. And it's true, I agree. COVID has created these interesting ways that we can all talk together. It's so wonderful to hear all your perspectives today. And I thank everybody for bringing those to the table. And even being able to put the performance recording online so that we can have it be more accessible and continue to allow people to see it who may not be able to get to the gallery or whatnot. So yeah, I think we'll probably wrap up shortly. Is there anybody that would like to say anything you feel hasn't been said, or would like to say anything before I close?
Well, I'm not sure. I'm not sure how I feel about online. I get that it's the reality of today. But I find with visual installation, because like putting visual work online, you have to, you know, it has control limitations. It's, for me, it's not as effective. So I'm not 100% there yet, but it is the reality that we're working in. Paula is saying it's just a glimpse of your beautiful art, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I definitely understand what you're saying. We're all struggling in the sector with this shift because being, in some cases, it's not possible to see the live experience or event, particularly in performing arts right now. And so we are all adjusting. Andrea's nodding vigorously. It's affecting all of us in the arts. Yeah, absolutely. So it's new, maybe glimpses, like you say, Paula. So I think maybe, oh, sorry, go ahead, Ali.
Yes, there are pros and cons, but we're thinking of the environment, how it's changing. So, this has really helped in terms of the nature and the world and cleaning up our environment. So that it has positive aspects. Of course, we all have to stay home. So of course, the way we live our lives is very different. Yeah, you adjust. So there are pros and cons to all of it, and just have to balance that out.
Yep, very true. So I think possibly we'll just, I'll just thank everybody for being here with us today from your various homes and giving us a glimpse into what it was like to work on this piece. And just thank you for being part of it and sharing it with us at the gallery. And thank you to the audience for participating and watching today. And we encourage you, though, if you are in the Ottawa-Gatineau area, the Ottawa Art Gallery is open. We do have a pre-booking system, but we are free of admission, just booking so that we know the numbers in the building due to the current situation. But make your way down to see us in downtown Ottawa. The exhibition RhythmScape and this wonderful piece is on view until January 3rd. So you will have time even over the holidays and between now and then to please get down and see it if you're able to. And as just a publicly funded institution, I just should take a moment to thank our funders, without which any of this would be possible. So just the City of Ottawa, the Ontario Arts Council, and the Canada Council for the Arts, as well as the partners that made the exhibition possible. So that would be the Korean Cultural Center and the COFIS and the Gyeonggi Museum, who initiated this exhibition to begin with. Thank you all. Please make sure to sign up for our newsletter on our website if you want to get notification of other events like this that we'll hold and other aspects of RhythmScape that will come out virtually before it closes. So thank you all again so much to all the participants, and we'll sign off for now.